Good day, everyone. I am once again Maki Galendez presenting the fourth part of renal function, which is all about ammonia. So, by definition, ammonia is produced in the deamination of amino acids during protein metabolism. It is removed from the circulation and converted to urea in the liver. Remember that free ammonia is neurotoxic. However, ammonia is present in the plasma in very low concentrations. So ano ba yung disease association ng ammonia? Remember that ammonia is a highly neurotoxic byproduct of protein catabolism, primarily generated by bacterial action in the GI tract and the deamination of amino acids. Under normal conditions, the liver would rapidly convert ammonia into water-soluble urea via the urea cycle for excretion by the kidneys. When this conversion process fails, hyperammonemia occurs, leading to encephalopathy and central nervous system dysfunction. So, paano siya nangyayari? Let's first look at hepatic failure. So, in cases of acute hepatic failure, let's say due to drug-induced toxicity or viral hepatitis, there is a sudden massive loss of functioning hepatocytes. So, basically, nawalan ka ng hepatocytes. Okay. The liver's capacity to perform the urea cycle is abruptly diminished and ammonia levels rise rapidly in the blood. High ammonia levels cross the blood-brain barrier, causing astrocyte swelling and cerebral edema. This is a hallmark of the hepatic encephalopathy. In acute cases, ammonia levels correlate more closely with the severity of cerebral edema than in chronic cases. So what happens in hepatic failure? Sa hepatic failure, bumaba yung number of functioning hepatocytes mo. Because there is loss in the number of viable hepatocytes, konti na lang din ang capacity ng liver mo to perform the urea cycle, causing hyperammonemia. And yung ammonium or the ammonia, actually, nasa stuck siya sa brain, especially in the astrocytes, causing cerebral edema, and yun na yung kanyang hepatic encephalopathy na manifestation. Another is in cases of severe liver disease or chronic cirrhosis. In chronic conditions like cirrhosis, the mechanism of hyperammonemia is twofold. First is hepatocellular dysfunction. Similar sa hepatic failure, baba na yung number of viable cells mo. But in hepatocellular dysfunction, primarily because of the formation of scarred and fibrotic tissue, replacing healthy liver cell, reducing the overall enzyme activity available for the urea cycle. Other than that, meron ding portosystemic shunting. Ano ang ibig sabihin ng portosystemic shunting? Because of cirrhosis, there is portal hypertension. Mataas ang blood pressure ng mga portal veins mo, forcing blood to bypass the liver through collateral vessels. So anong nangyayari? Rather than passing through the liver, ammonia-rich blood is being shunted to the intestines. To other places from the intestines. So ammonia-rich blood from the intestine enters the systemic circulation directly without ever being detoxified by the liver. So for severe liver disease, ang first is hepatocellular dysfunction. Nare-replace ang hepatocytes with scar tissue. So, konti na lang yung capacity to perform urea cycle. Another is portosystemic shunting wherein high portal blood pressure causes shunting of the ammonia-rich blood from the intestine to go to other parts of the body without being detoxified by the liver. Another is yung inherited deficiencies of the urea cycle enzyme. So these are genetic disorders, example of which is the ornithine transcarbamylase or the OTC deficiency, which is the most common, where one of the 5 key enzymes of the urea cycle is missing or defective. So the metabolic pathway is blocked at the stage of the missing enzyme. This leads to a backup of precursors, most notably ammonia, immediately after birth or during bouts of metabolic stress. So simply, if nawalan ka ng enzyme, then the substrate will not be converted into urea, so causing accumulation of back metabolites, especially ammonia. So these conditions produce the highest recorded levels of plasma ammonia. Unlike liver disease, normal ang liver structure. Walang death of the hepatocytes, walang replacement with scar tissue. Pero ang problema is yung chemical machinery. Walang enzyme to facilitate the conversion of ammonia to urea. And then lastly, you have your urea syndrome. So Reyes syndrome is an acute encephalopathy with fatty infiltration of the liver, typically following a viral illness such as those seen in influenza or varicella in children treated with aspirin. Okay? Please take note, class, na contraindicated ang magbigay ng aspirin sa mga bata na merong mga fever, particularly those that are afflicted with the influenza or flu. So the syndrome is characterized by severe mitochondrial dysfunction. Since the first two steps of the urea cycle occur within the mitochondria, such as the carbamyl phosphate synthetase 1 and the OTC, ammonia conversion is paralyzed. A threefold or greater increase in plasma ammonia is a primary diagnostic criterion for Reyes syndrome. So ang nangyari daw is ang baseline ammonia, 3 times its value, is enough to diagnose Reyes syndrome. While the liver enzymes such as AST and ALT also rise, ammonia level is a critical indicator for the severity of metabolic crises. Remember, ammonia is a potent neurotoxin. The accurate laboratory measurement of ammonia in plasma is complicated by its low concentration, instability, and pervasive contamination. Two approaches have been used for the measurement of plasma ammonia. One is a two-step approach in which ammonia is isolated from the sample and then assayed, and the second involves direct measurement of ammonia by enzymatic method or ion-selective electrode. The assay detects ammonia or ammonium. One of the first analytic methods for ammonia, developed by Conway in 1935, exploited the volatility of ammonia to separate the compound in a microdiffusion chamber. Ammonia gas Ammonia gas from the sample diffuses into a separate compartment and is absorbed in a solution containing a pH indicator, and the amount of ammonia is determined by titration. So what does that mean? Yung method na na-develop ni Conway, basically, ammonia is volatile. So, nagiging gas siya. And that gas is being trapped and then it is being mixed into a solution containing a pH indicator. Yung ammonia gas that has been dissolved in the solution is then titrated to calculate for the amount of ammonia dissolved in the solution. Yun yung ginawa ni Conway on 1935. Okay? So ammonia can also be measured by an enzymatic method using glutamate dehydrogenase. So this is the one that you're seeing right now. This method is convenient and the most common technique used currently. The decrease in absorbance at 340 nanometers as nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate, or NADPH, is consumed in the reaction is proportional to the ammonia concentration in the specimen. NADPH is the preferred coenzyme because it is used specifically by GLDH. NADH will participate in reactions of other endogenous substrate such as pyruvate. Okay? So, again, ang prefer here is yung NADPH. Class, this is the substrate and this is the product, okay? So, what happens is that glutamate dehydrogenase acts upon NADPH and then yung NADPH natin, they are being converted to NADP. Okay, so remember class ha, that as NADP increases in concentration, what happens nga? Decrease in absorbance at 340 nanometers. So, ang concentration ng NADP class, it is also directly proportional to the concentration of ammonium. Okay, so again, increase in NADP causes decrease in absorbance at 340, both of which is directly proportional to ammonium. Decrease of absorbance is directly proportional to ammonium concentration. So additionally, modifications includes the addition of adenosine diphosphate. Para saan? To increase the rate of reaction and to stabilize the enzyme glutamate dehydrogenase. So, this method is used on many automated systems and is available as a prepared kit from numerous manufacturers. So, other than yung Conway method and other than the GLDH method assay, meron pang other automated systems. So, you have the dry slide automated system, which uses a thin film colorimetric assay. So, I think you're already familiar with the principle. In this method, ammonia reacts with an indicator to produce a colored compound that is detected spectrophotometrically. Another, the direct measurement using an ion-selective electrode has been developed. So the electrode measures the change in pH of a solution of ammonium chloride as ammonia diffuses across a semi-permeable membrane. Yun lang yun siya. So again, you have Conway method, which uses the volatility of ammonia, and then measured by titration. You have glutamate dehydrogenase assay, which measures disappearance of absorbance at 340 by the production of NADP. Then you also have your dry chemistry approach, measured spectrophotometrically. And lastly is the ion selective electrode approach, which measures the change in pH. So here is the summary of analytic methods. I'm just going to be leaving this for your reading, but majority of automated techniques is banking on the GLDH assay. So what are the specimen considerations? Careful specimen handling is extremely important for plasma ammonium assays. Whole blood ammonia concentration increases rapidly following specimen collection because of in vitro amino acid deamination. So, kailangan mo siya i-process immediately or kailangan mo siya i-store on an ice slurry to prevent in vitro amino acid deamination. Okay? So, venous blood should be obtained without trauma and placed on ice immediately. Okay? Other than that, some laboratories would also require no use of tourniquet for the extraction. Kasi, if you're going to use a tourniquet, ang nangyayari is nagkakaroon ng hemoconcentration. And remember that normally, ammonia has low concentrations in the blood. So, if mag-use ka ng tourniquet, possible na magkaroon ng slight but significant increase in ammonia levels. So, heparin and EDTA are suitable anticoagulants, of which heparin is the preferred. Commercial collection containers should be evaluated for ammonia interference before a new lot is put into use. Samples should be centrifuged at 0 to 4 degrees Celsius within 20 minutes of collection and the plasma or serum removed. Kailangan class H, refrigerator temperature, 0 degrees to 4 degrees Celsius, and kailangan within 20 minutes to prevent in vitro amino acid deamination. So, specimens should be assayed as soon as possible, or if hindi possible na ASAP, then store frozen, of which frozen plasma is stable for several days at negative 20 degrees Celsius. Erythrocytes contain 2 to 3 times as much ammonia as plasma. Meaning to say, if merong hemolysis, anong nangyayari? Times 3 almost ang increase ng hemolysis. So, cigarette smoking by the patient is a significant source of ammonia contamination, and it is recommended that patients do not smoke for several hours before a specimen is collected. Many substances influence the in vivo ammonia concentration. Other than that, in dry slide technique, if ang patient mo has a high glucose concentration, typically greater than 60 milligrams per deciliter, then it could interfere with dry slide methods. First, let's look at the positive interference. So substances that increase ammonia include ammonium salts. As its name suggests, they are direct precursors. If a patient is receiving treatments containing ammonium, such as certain expectorants, the baseline nitrogen levels rise, directly increasing plasma ammonia. You also have asparaginase, a chemotherapy drug which works by breaking down asparagine into aspartic acid and ammonia. A common side effect of this treatment is transient hyperammonemia. Then, barbiturates and narcotics. These drugs are central nervous system depressants, and in patients with pre-existing liver disease, they can depress the respiratory center or metabolic rate, indirectly slowing hepatic clearance of toxins. Diuretics such as loop or thiazides can also cause hypokalemia. Ano nga ang nangyayari, class, if merong hypokalemia? The kidney needs to compensate. Paano? By increasing ammonia production through ammoniogenesis in the renal tubules, which then leaks into the systemic circulation. Then you also have ethanol consumption. Remember that alcohol is a hepatotoxin. Acute or chronic consumption impairs the enzymes of the urea cycle and can lead to transient elevations in ammonia. You also have hyperalimentation through total parenteral nutrition. Remember that in TPN, mataas ang protein. If the amino acid load exceeds the liver's processing capacity, ammonia levels will rise. Now, for substances that decrease ammonia or yung mga negative interferents, these are often therapeutic agents used specifically to treat high ammonia, such as lactulose. Ito yung gold standard treatment for hepatic encephalopathy. It works in the colon by creating an acidic environment. This converts diffusible ammonia into the non-diffusible ammonium ion, trapping it into the gut to be excreted in the stool. Another, Lactobacillus acidophilus. This good bacteria or this good bacteria compete with the urea splitting ammonia producing bacteria in the gut. By populating the gut with lactobacillus, less ammonia is produced by intestinal flora. You also have several antibiotics such as the neomycin and rifaximin. So these are used to sterilize the gut. They kill ammonia producing bacteria in the intestine and significantly reducing the amount of ammonia absorbed into the portal vein. Levodopa, while primarily for Parkinson's, has been shown in some clinical settings to improve metabolic clearance or neurological symptoms associated with high ammonia, though its effect on the actual number is less consistent than lactulose. And lastly, you have your diphenhydramine. This is an antihistamine. While its direct effect on ammonia is less common, it is sometimes noted in clinical charts for reducing metabolic demand or interfering with specific older analytic methods. Again, in most cases, etong interfering substance na decrease is actually used to treat hyperammonemia. And then you also have your lactoacidophilus na nag-compete with ammonia-producing bacteria. So here are the reference ranges for ammonia.